Okay, we're back. This time, we will talk about mediate inference. So the last time we had what we call immediate inference. Tama yan?
Yeah,
Oo.
in the form of
So,
equivalence of
equivalence of proposition. So this time, we'll have mediate inference. Ano ba yung mediate inference?
Okay.
So bago tayo pumunta sa pagtalakay ng mediate inference,
Review muna, review.
mag-review muna tayo ng categorical propositions. First, there are 4 types.
We have the AEIO.
A, E, I, O. And then the forms are A propositions.
Sa akin, all S is P yan, ha?
Ay, all S is P pala to kay Sir
Okay,
Alex.
okay.
Oo.
No S is
No
P.
S is P, some S, RP, some S is not P.
What is important
Ayan.
is the AEIO classification.
So siguro naman dito wala na tayong
Wala
tanong.
tayong problema dyan.
Master na natin yan. And then, sa quantity, ano to? Quantity ng buong proposition.
Yeah, of course.
So, pag,
Kasi ang topic natin proposition.
yes. So, A and E are universal propositions. And then, I and O are particular propositions.
Ba't maliit yung isang letter?
Oo nga, no. Ayan. Kasi maliit yung particular eh. Oo. Pero yung isang malaking particular.
Grammatical error.
Oo. Grammatical error.
Typing error.
Okay. So, dito tayo sa quality. So, A and I, parehong affirmative yan. Pag EO, negative. Siguro naman, wala na tayong tanong dito.
Ano yung history ng affirmative tsaka negative? Kung bakit A and I?
Yung sa ano yun, di ba? Latin?
O AI, affirm.
Oo. Affirmo, tsaka nego.
Negro.
Negro.
Pag negative,
Wag, baka maalala nila si Nognog. Baka manalo pa yun. Wag na. Oo. Ayan, distribution. No? Ano ba tong distribution na to?
Distribution means universality, universality and particularity.
Okay. So, distribution is an attribute of the terms. So, yung subject term tsaka predicate term ng propositions. And then, a term is said to be distributed if the proposition makes an assertion about every member of the class denoted by the term. Ano yung ibig sabihin nun?
It's a question whether it is universal or particular.
Okay.
If it is distributed, it means universal. And when it's undistributed, it is particular.
Particular.
Take note of that, people, kasi you will be hearing terms such as undistributed.
Oh, yes. Lalo na pagdating sa rules. Importante yan.
It has something to do with rule number 4.
Rule number 4. So, ayan. So, again, in other words, a term is distributed if and only if the statement assigns or distributes an attribute to every member of the class denoted by the term. So, nabanggit kanina, pag sinasabing distributed, universal. At pag undistributed, particular. Ayan, good. Thus, if a statement asserts something about every member of the S class, meaning subject, then the subject is distributed. Otherwise, S and P are... Uy, may nag-text. Distributed siguro to. Tingnan natin kung may example tayo dito. Ayan. Ito, example. So, sa A propositions, all S is or RP, yung subject
is universal.
Universal. So, therefore, distributed. And then, ang predicate is particular or undistributed.
So, anyway, it was already discussed.
Na-discuss na rin.
Composition of terms.
Oh, yes. Oh.
Saka yung quantity and quality of. So, just to make a review about
Review na to.
Okay, so this is for everybody's information. Affirmative propositions have undistributed predicates.
Oh, yun. Pag affirmative. So, A and I.
Except for first class propositions.
Okay.
While negative propositions have distributed or universal predicates.
Ayun.
Now,
So,
how do we know the quantity of the subject? The quantity of the subject is determined by the quantity of the given proposition.
Okay.
So if the proposition is universal, it follows that the subject is universal. While if it is particular, I mean the proposition, it follows the particular quantity also of the subject.
ayun. Oo. So, madali lang tandaan.
Ang
Madali lang
major
tandaan.
issue dyan, yung quantity ng predicate. Paano nagiging universal or particular? So I gave...
So, affirmative, negative.
Yeah, okay. Generally speaking, kasi merong special rule for A.
Yung singular?
Okay,
Yun ba yan?
I call it first class proposition.
First class, so.
Continue
Okay.
tayo, tuloy tayo.
Continue tayo. Kung may tanong kayo dito sa classroom na lang. Oo. Kasi review lang naman yun eh. Okay, so ito na. Mediate inference
Sir,
na.
muna ang ano ngayon dahil ako ay suffering from nasal
Nasal congestion.
Nasal congestion. Kaya may music kayo para hindi nyo marinig yung signal.
May nasal congestion kaya hindi makapagsalita.
Alright.
Okay. So ito yung definition ng mediate inference. A process of reasoning in which from one proposition with the aid of another proposition or a third term called medium, we infer not only a new proposition but also a new truth. So kung babalikan natin yung immediate inference, kung saan meron tayong square of oppositions saka equivalence of propositions, doon walang third proposition. So kaya immediate, dumiretso na siya sa conclusion.
From one proposition to another.
Yes, pero doon walang bagong katotohanan. Kasi inulit mo lang naman eh. Kung ano yung subject and predicate, the same pagdating mo sa conclusion. This time, sa mediate inference, you have another proposition. So, meron tayong tatlong propositions. At meron din tayong tinatawag na third term or known as medium. Ayan. Pag na-combine na yung tatlong propositions, we come up with, two propositions, we come up with a new proposition and also a new truth.
Okay, a syllogism kasi, we're talking about...
Syllogism na tayo.
Meron kasing types eh. May tinatawag na categorical syllogism, meron tinatawag na polysyllogism. Now, we make use of categorical syllogism or mediate inference kasi dalawa lang siya.
Okay.
So, dalawang proposition, two propositions to arrive at a new conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, unlike in polysyllogism, mahaba.
Ayun, mahabang proseso yan.
So, we are using a standard categorical syllogism in our discussion. So,
So basic to. Ito yung basic talaga. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na lahat ng syllogism ganito ang itsura. At kung napapansin nyo, pag may mga argumentong nangyayari o debate, yun, mahabang yun, syllogisms.
Hindi siya napapala under sa formal logic.
Okay, so meron tayong example dito. All bar passers are lawyers. Peter St. John is a bar passer, therefore Peter St. John is a lawyer. So, meron tayong tatlong terms. So, isa-isahin natin to. Sa unang proposition, meron tayong bar passers and lawyers. Di ba? Tama ba yun?
Yep.
And then, sa pangalawang proposition, nandyan si Peter St. John, and then bar passer. So, makikita natin ngayon na anong common doon sa dalawang propositions. Yung common sa dalawang proposition, yun yung tinatawag na medium or third term. So we have...
We'll discuss that technically later.
So ito yung numberan natin. One, lawyer. Hindi malinaw. Ito. Two, Peter St. John. And then, pangatlo, bar passers.
So determine that they are different terms.
Yes.
In a given inference or syllogism.
Okay. Now, we come up with a new proposition. Peter St. John, our second term, and lawyer, our first term. Yan, ito yung sinasabing new truth. Peter St. John is a lawyer. So, kadalasan ganito naman ang nangyayari, di ba?
Pero ang mahalaga kasi dito is for them to know the structure first, what makes up term number 1, term number 2, and term number 3.
Oh, yes.
So, proceed.
Okay, proceed tayo. Ito yung nabanggit kaninang dalawang klase na syllogisms. So, categorical and hypothetical. So, ngayon, ang concern natin ay categorical syllogisms. Tsaka na lang yung hypothetical.
We'll be discussing the final.
Yes. Sa final period na yung hypothetical. Okay. So, ano ang categorical syllogism? It is an argument consisting of exactly 3 categorical propositions. So, dalawang premises at isang conclusion. In the entire syllogism, there appears only and exactly 3 univocal terms, with each being used twice. So, sa isang syllogism, merong 3 univocal terms na ginamit ng 2 beses. Okay? Ayan. So, 3 categorical propositions. Yung mga nasa unang propositions, yun ang tinatawag na premises. Yung pangatlo, so itong may therefore, ito yung conclusion. Okay? So, ulitin ko. Yung naunang 2 propositions, ang tawag dyan, premises. At ang pangatlo ay tinatawag na conclusion.
There is a question raised in my class. Bakit daw premise, dati proposition lang?
Oo, bakit naging premise
Okay,
nga?
if there are 2 or more propositions in a given inference, we make it premise. Kasi
Premise
these are
na.
supporting, there is a supporting proposition, we call it premise. So
Okay. Kung nag-iisa siya,
we call it
proposition.
proposition.
Pero,
A premise is actually a counter-argument or a supporting argument.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Ayan, so kung nagsama na yung propositions, premises na ang
2 or
tawag.
more.
2 or more.
Sa polygy syllogism kasi more.
Okay. So ito yung example ng isang valid categorical syllogism. So meron tayong politicians, 1, actually ito yung 3 no? Kasi siya yung common sa dalawang premises eh. So politicians, and then gawin nating 1 itong good in rhetoric.
So you're now numbering and putting a number, tapos yung number represents the term. Sige, wala namang problema dyan.
Yan, okay lang. Para ano lang, start lang.
Qualify.
And then 2 counselors. So we have 3 univocal terms. 2 beses ginamit. So 2 politicians, 2 counselors, at 2 ring good in rhetoric. So, yan ang valid. Yan ang structure niya. Yan ang dapat tandaan natin. Okay? So next slide. So ulit, ano ang nilalaman ng isang categorical syllogism? 3 univocal terms. Ito yung tawag sa kanila. Okay? Major term, minor term, at middle term.
Okay, sir, I have a request.
Okay.
Kasi in my class, I made use of major term to serve as big T. So,
Big P.
Big T.
T.
T. As in
Okay,
big T.
sulat natin yung T.
Big T. Okay, tapos yung minor term sa akin is small t.
Small t.
Okay, but, okay. Parang mali, parang payong, di ba? And
Parang
then,
pa. O yun,
the middle
pwede.
term serves as M.
M siya. Okay, parehas
Why
tayo.
did I make
M.
use of that? Sometimes, when you say P, it
Oo.
may be predicated.
P,
Or
oo.
S or subject. But kasi you don't really make, okay, the major term is not always predicating the premise.
No, kasi kaya siya P, kasi siya yung predicate term ng conclusion.
Kaya lang, hindi naman siya laging predicate term sa premises.
Sa premises, basta nandun siya sa premise.
Kaya sa akin, ganyan na lang
T
ginamit.
ang ginamit mo.
And then, anyway, I just make some qualification.
Sige.
So,
Kasi
tanong kayo para masagot ko.
Tama.
Diba? Para may iba-iba.
Ayan. So, ito kasi yung example ng, halimbawa, conclusion, natin. All S, so minor term. Ito yung conclusion tandaan nyo. Therefore, all S, ano ba to?
Hindi ka pwede.
Ang hirap magsulat. Nagiging we na tuloy. Ano ba? Bura. Ang hirap naman nito.
Hindi tayo pang world class. Kasi,
Talo tayo ng grade 1 Hindi na i-drawing. I-drawing natin.
Galit ang mga architecture students natin ba?
Ayan.
Walang istit ba?
Ayan. Pinilit talaga eh. So, ayan tigas ng ulo. Minor term S, major term P. Sa conclusion yan. Ayan lang. Ang M, ang middle term, hindi mo mahanap sa conclusion yan. Kaya walang M sa conclusion. Ano lang, S saka P lang yan. Ngayon, pag sinasabing P, saan yan mahanap? Sa major premise. Ayan. So,
tatanong kayo sa akin sa klase na.
Tanong nga yan,
Kanya tayo,
Ayan, major Pag S naman or small t, nasa minor premise yan. And then sa conclusion, wala ng M. Okay? So, tatluhan yan ha. Tatlong terms, tatlong propositions.
Okay.
Very good.
Tingnan natin yan.
Okay. So, ito yung 8 rules. Ayan, paano yan? Ito kasi dun sa source ko, hinati sa tatlo eh. Terminological rules na, ang involved sa rules na to ay yung terms. And then, ito kaya tinawag na quantitative properties. Kasi ang involved sa rules na to ay yung quantity ng terms, yung universal or singular, particular. And then yung pangatlong set of rules, it involves quality. Oo. So quality, quantity, and then terms.
Kasi sa akin may handouts
Doon
sila from
hinati.
Alma Santiago. So, so
Okay.
let me see kung...
So tingnan mo, parehas lang din naman.
Pareho pero yung order magkakaiba.
Rule 1, parehas ba? There must be 3 univocal terms and only 3 terms. Okay? So remember nyo yung yung sa simple apprehension, tsaka yung iba't ibang klaseng terms. Remember me. Remember me, remember you, remember 3. Okay, the middle term must always be taken in the same sense. Yun yung sabihin ng univocal. One must make sure that terms are not used equivocally.
Pag sinabi ng mga taga-subject, the middle term must be taken in the same sense.
Since
Iba yung sense mo.
magagalit yung mga estudyante mo sa baka barilin ka ni Duterte.
Pwede say, okay, taken in the same sense, the meaning must not change.
Oo. Yun nga, kaya nga yung univocal, di ba? No, yun eh.
Yun nga, same sense.
Same ba? Okay. So, hindi equivocal ha. O, ito na.
Video mo, alright ah.
Alright. Rock and roll.
Wow.
So, ito ang example ng invalid. Kasi hindi univocal term ang ginamit. Okay, example. A ruler is 12 inches long. Tama. No, yun naman ang ruler talaga eh. Ruler Pinoy is a ruler. Oh, siya yung nagahari sa Pilipinas. Therefore, Pinoy is 12 inches
I am
long.
na version ko eh.
Alright.
Alright, I am na version ko.
Hindi, may version siya pero baka ma-censor tayo eh. So sa classroom na lang kasi YouTube.
Tanungin niyo ako.
Nasa YouTube to eh. Oh, baka hindi tayo payagan ng
May filter ba?
Oo, may filter yan. Oh, yari tayo.
Sige.
Sa classroom na lang yung example
So, what
mo.
makes this a...
Ayan, bakit nga pala siya invalid?
That's invalid kasi the... Okay, so for example, this one. Okay. So,
Okay.
makikita niyo yung ruler dito.
Yung ruler, oh.
Okay, is different from the ruler here. See the color?
Oo.
They are taken equivocally. Okay. The ruler in the first is a material used for measuring.
For measuring.
The ruler in the second is a
human.
a leader.
A leader,
Okay, a
yes.
person who rules. So
Yeah.
how could it be that you conclude that Pinoy is 12 inches, considering that the one that mediates the two are
Have
they're
different equivocal.
They're not taken in the same sense.
Yeah. So ang nangyari dito, 'di ba ang rule natin 3 terms lang. So ang lumabas dito, we have 4 terms.
Bilangin mo.
Ha? Ay, bilangin natin.
Nagbibilang ka kanina.
Ay, oo nga, tama para consistent
Erase mo na siya,
tayo.
erase mo muna.
Erase natin 'to. Ayan, okay.
Bilang
So, bilang tayo So we have
beauty na nagbibilang.
yun. So we have 1, yung nasa taas, and then 2, 12 inches long, and then 3, Pinoy, and then we have 4, ruler.
So dapat tatlo lang, di ba?
Dapat 3 lang. So kaya tuloy ang nangyari sa conclusion, mali.
Okay, I'll give you another version. Erase tayo, erase.
Okay, erase.
Yun yung
Hindi,
kanina.
ito. Eraser yan.
Okay, so kung titignan nyo, the major term is number 1.
Ayun, okay.
Okay. Tapos the minor term.
Minor term.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay, very good.
Okay. And kung makikita nyo, pagdating dun sa...
Number 3.
Ano ba ito? I use...
You can use white.
Ayan. Red na lang.
Okay.
3.
3 yan.
Tapos, you see another, then 4. Dapat,
No.
3 and 3 sila.
Dapat 3 and 3.
Kaso magkaiba sila ng meaning, therefore it's taken equivocally.
Ayun.
So this is considered as fallacy of 4 terms or fallacy of equivocation.
Ayun, tama. Meron yan. Ito, lalabas yan. Tingnan mo. Nasaan na yun? Ba't wala? Ang galing nga. Ayun! Nahiya.
Ang galing doon.
Nahiya ba?
Nahiya ba?
Fallacy of equivocation pag yan ang nangyari. Oo. Or 4 terms. Okay? So, madali lang. 3 ang rules. Pag may lumabas na 4 terms, fallacy of 4 terms.
Next.
Very good. Alright.
Rock and roll in the world.
Okay, rule number 2. The middle term must not occur. Occur.
Occur.
Uh,
Okay. Why should the middle term not occur in the conclusion?
Oh, bakit?
Okay. Sino lumaki ka?
Hindi ko alam.
Okay. Because it has no place there.
Ay, oo, di ba? Naalala niyo yung sa umpisa.
Bakit? Kasi the major term is always the predicate term of the conclusion.
Okay.
While the minor term is the subject.
The subject.
The subject of the. Now, if the middle term exists either in the subject or the predicate, ang tawag yan sa Davao, misplaced middle ba?
Misplaced. Ma-appeal. Ma-appeal. Appeal-apilon.
Mas please. Wala siya middle ba no?
Wala. Misplaced siya.
Displeased ba?
Oo, kasi ang middle term, point of comparison. Di ba? Eto, parang sa pagliligawan, di ba?
Ako, meron gano'n.
Ayan, yung
I hate ligawan.
yung middle term doon, yun yung bridge, yung tulay.
Ayun, ngayon, pagka hindi sila pareho,
Oo.
ay hindi.
Pag nagkatuluyan na yung dalawa, wag na pumapel yung tulay. Di ba? Kasi pag pumapel pa siya, magiging love triangle.
Romance yan.
So yun. Kaya middle term, premises ka lang. Huwag kang pumunta sa conclusion. O, katulad nito, example. Ito, yung mga examples na binibigay namin, mga invalid yan. Okay. A goddess is a female.
Hindi ba si Pia Wurzbach?
Ha? Pia, hindi. Si ano yan, lidagat. Ang diwata ng karagatan. Di ba? But a goddess is a deity. Therefore, a goddess is a female deity. Deity, Diyos. Diyosa. Oh, di ba? Ganon, Diyosa din naman yung goddess, di ba? A deity, ganon din. Parang, ano yan, double jeopardy.
Pinagsama kasi.
Oo. Kung titingnan mo, tama naman, di ba? Parang tama eh. Diyan maraming nabudol-budol dahil sa ganyan. Oh, kasi parang tama, pero hindi pala.
Alam kaya sa YouTube ng Amerika yung budol-budol ba?
Alam nila yan, for Filipino audience yun. Tingnan mo, anong nangyari? Alin ang middle term dyan, ha? Alin ang middle term? Ang middle term natin ay, goddess. So, dapat dun lang. Pumapel sa conclusion. So, anong tawag dyan? Ha? Anong fallacy na yan? Nasaan na yun? Ha? Nawala na. Ayun! Fallacy of misplaced. Parang Miss Universe, ha?
Sige na,
diba?
Misplaced,
Miss Universe, Miss Philippines. Okay, rule number 3. Ayan, okay. Ito na yung nabanggit natin kanina, yung ni-review natin na distribution. Okay. So, ano ang rule sa rule number 3? No term may have a greater distribution or extension in the conclusion than it had in the premises. Otherwise, the effect is greater than the cause, which is impossible. Ba't naman impossible yun?
Kasi kapag undistributed siya from the premise, from where it started, how could it be distributed in the conclusion? Yun lang ang pinaka-ano. It's not possible to happen. Kasi ang definition ko palagi pag undistributed, it's weak. Tapos pagdating mo sa conclusion, naging strong.
So naging strong. Oh, okay.
Depende yun. So, that's why, kapag ganun, may term dun sa Iloilo. Sobra ba ba?
Sobra! Yun naman pala eh.
Illicit ba doon?
Oo. Sobra. Ito, tingnan nyo yung nasa baba. Lower portion. Ang sinasabi ko sa klase, bawal lumaki.
Yun nga.
So, from particular
hindi pwedeng lumaki
to universal, bawal yun. Oo.
Hindi ko natutunan yung sa logic ko sa seminary.
Wala ba? Bawal lumaki. Kaya maraming seminarista hindi lumalaki. Yan ha. Kung lumaki, okay, kung may lumaki man, ang tawag doon fallacy of illicit. Fallacy of illicit. So, kung sino ang lumaki? Major term, fallacy of illicit major. Kung yung lumaki naman, ay minor term, so fallacy of illicit minor.
Tanong kayo sa klase, ha?
Oo. Yung lumaki, ibig sabihin distribution yan, ha? Okay. Sinabi na lang natin yung
Teka
para
muna,
Oy,
in the text or the handout that I gave, this is rule number 2.
this is rule number 2.
Kaya lang, I appreciate the distribution made by Sir in his slide. Okay, so we're using the slide of Sir Ruben. Sige, balik tayo.
Ayan. So yung
What matters is not the rule number, but the rules.
Oo, kasi hindi naman
Application.
pagsagot natin hindi naman number
Fallacy.
ang ano eh.
You haven't discussed the term fallacy.
Fallacy.
Now we're making use of.
Ay, oo nga. O, sige. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng
Fallacy
fallacy?
is an error in thinking or error in reasoning.
An error in
That's why
thinking.
when we make use of fallacy, ano yung muna natin, 4 terms, fallacy of equivocation.
Oh, yeah.
It's an error. No? It violates a certain rule or structure.
Tama.
Okay, sige.
Kaya nagiging invalid. Okay. Example ng rule number 3.
Ayan, galing kay Alma yung example.
Ayan, galing kay Alma to. Hindi si Alma Moreno, ha?
Alma Santiago.
Oo.
Okay, so tignan nyo to, This is, major term. All numbers are 2. Tignan nyo.
Okay.
If you're going to qualify this is, gamitin nyo sa akin, this is major term, tapos particular siya.
Capital na T.
Okay, tapos naging
Particular.
universal siya.
TU ba gamit mo dyan? Ako pinapalaki ko yung letter.
Okay, so gamitin natin. So tignan nyo, from P, tapos naging P. Yan, yung gamit sa kanya.
Naging big.
Maliit ito, tama. Hindi ko ma-determine.
Parehong malaki nilagay mo eh. Okay lang yan. Binura na lang.
So basta ito, from particular, naging universal.
Yes.
And you are actually referring to the major term.
Yeah.
Now, what makes this universal? Kasi e-proposition siya. Distributed ang predicate ng negative proposition.
Yeah, tama. Remember that.
Actually, alam na nila. In a similar fashion, now, tingnan mo na. Since it happens in the major term, this is called the fallacy.
Fallacy of illicit
Now,
major.
ito naman ganun din, from P to U.
Okay.
Okay, and it happens, unlike in the first, it happens in the minor term.
Minor premise.
So this is fallacy or minor premise rather. So it is fallacy of illicit minor, and this is fallacy of illicit major.
Illicit major, Okay. May animation yan, tinan mo.
Diba?
Ito, click mo yan. Iyon, no? Diba? Yun, no? Lumaki. Bawal lumaki.
Okay.
Tandaan niyo yan.
Mabasa ulit.
So if a term is distributed in the conclusion, it makes a claim about every member of the class it denotes. So if the term is not distributed in the premises, it makes an assertion about only part of the class.
Right.
Hence, the conclusion would go beyond what is justified by the premises, and thus renders the syllogism invalid. Okay? Good. Next slide. Rule number 4. Ito naman. So rule number Rule number 3 involves the major and minor terms. In rule number 4, it involves the middle term. And the middle term must be taken universally or distributed at least once. In order to effectively establish the presence of a genuine connection between the major and minor terms, the premises of a syllogism must provide some information about the entire class designated by the middle term. If the middle term were undistributed in both premises, then the two portions of the designated class of which they speak might be completely unrelated to each other.
Okay. Now, the very purpose of a syllogism is, in particular, a categorical syllogism, is to fuse or connect one particular proposition, we call it premise right now,
okay,
to another, to arrive at a conclusion. Now, if one is distributed, I'm referring to a proposition, you can arrive at a valid conclusion.
Oh, yes.
Now, what if both of them are undistributed? It therefore follows that the conclusion cannot be arrived at.
Walang connection.
Hindi mo may connect. Distributed sila eh. That's why, so you have to have at least one distributed middle term to arrive at, or one universal middle term to connect, to validly connect one proposition or premise to another.
Kung pareho silang universal, okay lang.
I think you have
Okay lang, di ba? Pag parehong universal. Pero kung parehong particular, ayun ang hindi pwede.
Kasi
weak siya. So ito yung example natin. All mothers are females, but some females are barren. Therefore, some barren persons are mothers. Sa unang tingin, Tama. Pero kung titingnan niyo yung distribution ng middle term, so alin dito ang ating middle term? Ang middle term natin ay, ano yun? Females.
Yes, females.
Ayan. So kung anong common sa dalawang premises, yun ang ating middle term. So, all mothers are females is an A proposition. So sa A proposition, ang kanyang predicate ay particular. Diba? Sa isang affirmative proposition. And then, some females are barren is an I proposition. The subject is particular, the predicate is also particular. So kung titingnan niyo yung middle term natin, pareho siyang undistributed or particular. So hindi natin ngayon ma-connect yung mothers na ito yung ating major term with barren, which is our minor term.
Bakit?
Kasi hindi siya distributed.
Pareho silang weak.
Parehong weak. Okay. So yun. So anong fallacy pag nangyari yung ganun?
We call it fallacy of undistributed middle term.
Fallacy of undistributed middle term.
DLSUD students are hotdog lovers.
Hotdog, okay.
Okay.
Some ba yun? All?
Hindi, when you say DLSUD, indefinite yan eh.
Okay. So some yun.
Okay. Prostitutes are hotdog lovers.
Hotdog
Or
lovers.
some prostitutes
are hotdog lovers.
DLSUD.
Ay, oo, mali. Kasi
Ano,
pareho.
totoo yun. Sampa. Or you will take
Hindi
it
nga
out.
pwede kasi hindi mo na i-connect eh.
Okay,
Ayan,
wala.
joke lang yan, joke.
Monkeys are banana lovers. Logic teachers
Are banana lovers.
Logic teachers are monkeys.
Our monkeys,
Pero ka naman.
half-truth.
Namuunggoy lang ako, pero hindi ako unggoy ba?
Half-truth.
Ang kulit ba?
Pwedeng totoo.
Pero hindi kasi yun ang issue. Ang issue
Oo.
is all about the structure.
Yung structure kasi. So, tingnan nyo. Mali talaga.
Mali yun, no?
Kaya maraming nadadali sa ganyan eh.
Yan.
Maraming na
Bakit
budol-budol.
tuloy
Ito. Madali lang to.
Sige nga, explain mo nga yun.
Minus, wala.
Ako may explanation niya kanina.
Two-
Romantic explanation mo.
romantic yun sa akin. Sige nga.
Okay.
Two negative premises,
Ako
no
ako
conclusion.
yung first premise.
Sige.
Okay. Mag-shoot tayo.
Oo.
Okay. Hindi mo ako mahal.
Okay.
Hindi kita mahal. Ano conclusion?
Eh di wala.
Wala. Hindi tayo.
Galing nga. Di doon na lang sa tulay.
When we both, when we both negate each other, we did not arrive at a conclusion.
Ayun.
Conclusion,
Hindi
we
kita
separate ba? We separate.
Ayun, hindi kita mahal, hindi mo ako mahal, mahal mo ay iba.
Oo.
Ayun yun, no?
Huwag na, baka sa natin, mapalo pa ako nung...
So yun, simple lang yan. Wala na siguro
In terms of structure, negative propositions
negate
are
each
weak
other. No?
propositions.
Weak proposition.
So in as much that particular propositions are weak propositions, so two weak propositions cannot arrive at a valid
A
conclusion.
conclusion, oo.
So what are weak? Negative and particular. Bear that in mind. Okay.
Ayun. So both major and minor terms are non-identical with the middle. We know nothing about their identity or non-identity with each other. So, ayun lang. Okay. So example, ito. Pero mas maganda yung example mo kanina, no?
Hindi kita-
Ito na lang, English to eh.
Sige na.
Okay. This chair is not a table.
Pareho lang yan. No?
This table is not a pen. Therefore, this pen is not a chair. Wala yun,
It
wala.
makes no sense.
No sense yan, nonsense yan.
Okay.
So, anong fallacy? Pag pinilit mo talaga.
Okay, since they are not included, ang tawag dyan, exclusive premises in,
Exclusive. Fallacy of exclusive
exclusive
premises.
premises or fallacy of two negative premises.
Two negative.
Okay.
Okay.
Why exclusive? They are excluded from each other.
Okay. So, yun.
Or they're
Pag pinilit,
exclusive from
yan.
each other.
Yan ang fallacy, ha. Okay, rule number 6.
Junbisa yan, Junbisa.
Junbisa ba yung nakaisip na? Galing nga.
Discussion ng una.
Okay. Now, rule number 6, two affirmative premises yield an affirmative conclusion.
It follows. Sabi mo nga kanina, in terms of charges,
Oo.
given two positive charges, therefore the
So, affirmative din. So, hindi pwedeng affirmative tapos negative yung conclusion.
Okay.
Diba?
Definitely.
Kasi they are identical with the third, so they must be identical with each other.
Okay.
So, example, wala kang example ng pag-ibig din, no? Wala.
Two affirmative premises.
Two affirmative
Yun na lang,
premises.
yun na lang.
Yun na rin. All writers are creative. So, affirmative. William Chan is a writer. Affirmative pa rin. And then sinabi mo, William Chan is not creative. Oh, di
Now,
ba?
as you can see,
Malabo.
okay. Meron ka kasi, when you commit, actually dun sa instruction kasi, if these are rules for proposition. And you can see, there are other fallacies created or committed by the rules.
Meron pa. Meron. Oh, tama. Meron pa
What is
isa.
the other? So, if you're
Sige nga, kung maalala niyo yung rules kanina.
So, check natin. Kaya para makita nyo, sisimulan nyo siya sa rule number 1, rule number 2, whatever the number you may have. So, there is a rule which states that, what? From
Yung
illicit.
illicit.
Terms are not extended. So, check
Distributed.
or distributed. Universal, particular.
Yeah.
Tignan natin to.
Universal yan.
Particular. Or even universal yan. Kasi parang negative yan eh. This is
Ito. Okay, yung conclusion.
Yeah, so
That's good. Yeah.
This is a major term. Tapos naging universal. So illicit major siya.
Illicit major. Ayun.
So there are other violations committed when we have violation of a given proposition. Kanina kasi term.
Oo.
Okay, dun sa text.
So 2 points.
Sa text ni Alma kasi, yung first
nakita
4 rules are rules pertaining to terms. While 5, 6, 7, 8, there are rules pertaining to proposition.
Propositions.
So, yun naman yung ibang classification in contrast dun sa kaninang paradigm ni Sir Ruben.
Okay. Okay. Good. Rule number 7. So, if one premise is negative, conclusion must be negative. Oo naman. Okay. If one term, say minor term, is identical with the third term, the middle term, and another term is non-identical with that same third term, then the two terms are non-identical with each other. So kung mayroong isang proposition or premise na negative, dapat yung conclusion mo negative. Hindi ka pwede mag-affirm sa conclusion. Ayan o. So all rebels are terrorists. Affirmative yan. But some students are not terrorists. Therefore, some students are rebels. O, di ba? Nonsense din. Sinabi mo na nga na, na hindi terrorist. Tapos affirm mo na ngayon.
That's why you commit the fallacy of affirming affirmative conclusion drawn
from a negative premise.
This is very uncommon.
Pero nangyayari yan. Kasi, lalo na kung mahaba yung, syllogism. Tapos sa dulo, biglang bawi ng ganun. Pag naligaw ka at tiningnan mo lang yung conclusion niya, madadaya ka eh. Madadali ka dyan. Kaya magandang tingnan nyo pag nagkaroon ng debate yung mga presidential candidates. Sundan nyo yung kanilang mga sinasabi. At titingnan nyo kung yung kanilang mga premises ay tumugma sa conclusion. Magandang practice yun. Di ba?
Gusto ko yung
project kaya natin yun.
Gusto ko yung senatorial mall lang mag-debate. Gusto ko makita si...
Madami yun.
Si Binay, yung babae. Yung anak ni...
Si Nancy Binay, tsaka si Alma Moreno. Ay, maganda yun. Magandang debate yun. Tingnan na.
Parang dalawang labandera.
Do I need to answer that?
Yung kanyang video na interview ni Karen.
Ay, ang daming fallacy doon. Grabe.
Manda kayo kasi ng project.
Yun.
Okay.
Ito na, last na. If one premise is particular, the conclusion is particular. Automatic yun. Then, if both premises are particular, no conclusion.
Ang tawag yan, the conclusion follows the weaker premise.
The conclusion follows the weaker premise. Pag sinasabing weaker premise, particular. Ayun.
Meron akong madaling explanation dyan eh.
Sige nga. Example na ba ito?
Pero marunong more.
Sige.
Okay.
Ayan, pwede magsulat dyan.
So, for example, this is A.
Okay.
Tapos, A. Okay. Considering that this is the major premise. Okay. And then this is the minor premise. Tapos this is the conclusion. Ayan. So,
okay.
Sir Roland, ano conclusion niya?
A.
Pwede rin I.
Pwede I. Yes, of course.
Kasi pareho silang strong eh. So A are strong, wala namang so wala tayong problema in terms of deduction kasi ginagamit.
Deduction,
yes.
yes.
Paano kung ganito? I give you an A and then an I.
Tapos I. So merong weak.
May weak. So
Okay.
particular affirmative. Tapos universal affirmative. So, cross out mo na yung common sila. Affirmative. So, therefore, affirmative to.
Affirmative
Pero,
yan.
particular to, therefore, dapat ay, PE.
Particular yung ano.
Oo. Bigyan pa kita
Conclusion.
ng isang sample.
O kasi hindi pwedeng maging
Ay, bawat isa,
universal
ayan.
yung...
Okay. Ay.
Ay.
Hindi. Tapos, okay. Anong kulang, sir?
Second premise. Minor premise.
Ano kayo minor premise? Pwede kaya dito?
Pwedeng ay. Hindi. Hindi pwedeng ay kasi ano yun? May rule tayo dun.
Correct. Dapat ito A.
A. Oo.
Okay. So, to arrive at a valid conclusion.
Diba? Importante yung rules.
Kaya application to later on.
Oo.
Ito, sige. What about this one? If I give you, for example, an O as a major premise and A as a minor.
O yan. So, anong conclusion?
Okay. Ito mo, sir, negative to eh. So, that's weak.
Weak siya.
Okay. Particular to, sir. Weak.
Particular na negative pa.
Universal affirmative to. Pareho sila strong. Cross out mo yan. Therefore,
Anong matitira? O.
So, PN.
Anong rule yung pag negative ang isang premise?
Okay.
Negative din dapat
Pero ito
ang
kasi, what I'm
conclusion.
trying to demonstrate is that the conclusion follows a weaker premise.
No, okay.
That's a weaker premise.
So the conclusion follows the weaker premise.
Oh, sir, last one.
Okay, go.
Sir, E. So, strong, diba?
E. Strong yan.
Yan, universal negative.
Okay.
Okay. Now, O. Particular negative. So, cross out natin, ha? So,
Okay.
universal. Okay, so therefore, so pareho itong
Parehong negative.
Therefore, conclusion.
No conclusion.
No conclusion.
Ano, ba't ka nakarating doon sa ano?
Kala mo, ano?
Kala mo,
Kala mo, matutugan mo ba? Hindi, kasi two negative premises cannot arrive at a valid conclusion.
Tama. Kung pinilit mo yung O, anong policy yun? Anong policy?
Exclusive premises.
Exclusive premises. Negative
Mag-away ba
premises.
sila? Tapos na pinagbati mo sa dulo.
Yun na, pwede naman yung pagbatiin.
Matagal din. Nag-aawayan nila, wala kwenta ba?
Oo nga.
Parang si Rojas, tsaka si Duterte, hindi magkakabati yun.
Pero maganda rin yan para mapag-usapan sila. Libreng ano yan eh.
Okay.
Libre ba?
Sige, sample na.
Some gamblers are cheaters.
Okay.
Some students are gamblers.
Therefore.
Ay, Filipinos pala. Therefore, some Filipinos are cheaters. Ano ba? So, anong rule to? Particular. Weaker premise. So, ibig sabihin tama to.
Hindi, invalid yan.
Ay, invalid pala to. Sige nga, tingnan mo. Bakit siya invalid?
Undistributed
Ito, tingnan mo. Gamblers. Particular yan. Ito, particular din. So, undistributed middle term. Galing.
Next one.
Ito pa. Next one. Explanation pala to.
Yaman na yan.
Ayan, naintindihan nyo na yan. Oo.
Mabayan, mamang dito pa.
So, pwede natin pag-usapan sana yan. Fallacy of universal conclusion drawn from particular premise. Ayun, ito, nabanggit na rin kanina. Okay. So, ito yung summary ng rules, ha. Ayan, 3 and only 3 terms. Middle term must not occur in the conclusion. No term may have a greater distribution or extension in the conclusion than it had in the premises. Middle term must be taken universally at least once. 2 negative premises yield no conclusion. 2 affirmative premises yield an affirmative conclusion.
Finally,
If one premise is negative, the conclusion must be negative. And if one premise is particular, the conclusion is particular.
follows the weaker premise.
Yan, exactly. Okay. So, ito yung fallacies. Summary of fallacies. So, equivocation, four terms, middle term, misplaced middle term, illicit minor major,
For further study and
Undistributed
question
middle term.
clarification, see me at a police station ba?
Tama.
Ang magtatanong lang ay magka-clarify, di ba?
Ayun,
So,
yung hindi yung magtatanong ang walang alam.
Walang alam, ayoko nun.
Dapat may karga na. Ano bang tawag doon?
Ala.
Dapat may karga kayo pag kayo nagtatanong, ha?
Nagbasa na.
Clarification eh. Hindi naman yun, ano.
Yun ang e-sins ng LinkedIn ba?
Yes,
Hindi naman tayo
so dapat
nagpapagod dito ng ganito para lang sila
Tama.
pagdating doon. Hindi, I'll be honest. Guys,
Oo.
kaya naka-blended. No? That's why para may matutunan nyo at your own pace.
tama. Oo.
Yan, mag-exercise na tayo.
Patay. Ayan. Oh.
Argument.
Ito. Some snakes are poisonous. No mammals are
Huwag
poisonous.
mo naman dapat pantay-pantay. Para
Oo nga. Sige lang. Next time. Therefore, no mammals are snakes. Oh, ano, valid or invalid?
Invalid do.
Invalid. Bakit siya
Okay,
invalid?
okay.
Bakit? Ano bang mali dito?
Palas yung illicit major yan.
Illicit
Kasi yung
major.
snakes ba?
Yung snakes. Oo, particular. Ay, particular pala ito eh. Tapos naging
Tingnan mo nga,
universal.
tingnan mo, tama ka.
Tingnan natin. Tama ba tayo? Ayun.
Illicit
Galing.
major daw.
Galing nga. Kaya pala nagtuturo ka ng logic.
Ganun. Okay, susunod.
Galing. O ito. All left-handers are more prone
Kaya
to...
sa susunod dapat pantay para hindi nalilito.
Pantayin.
Malito yan.
Hindi, maganda yun para malito din.
Sige.
Oo. Jake is left-handed, therefore Jake is more prone to occupational hazard. Ano ba yun? Parehong lahat.
Anong sabi ko naman?
All left-handers, universal yun eh.
Pag hindi mo nasagot yan,
Particular,
babalik
patay
kita sa
yari ako
senior
dito.
high. Babalik kita sa senior high.
More prone, parehong particular.
Parang may naghalo.
Meron ba? Left-hander, left-hander. Wala, hindi naman siya... Oh, hindi naman valid to.
Ha?
Valid ba yan?
Sigurado ka?
More prone. Particular din dun eh. A.
Tignan mo na lang yung sagot.
Sige nga, tingnan nga natin. Kalimutan ko yung sagot dito.
Oh.
Valid nga. Sabi na sa'yo eh. Valid. Okay. Ito. All students who study hard get good grades. Okay, Loretta gets good grades. Therefore, valid.
Valid? Mali ka dong. Tignan mo doon yung
Loretta, student. Uy! Ano to? Ano pa nangyari dito?
That's the fallacy of undistributed middle.
Undistributed middle term. A. Yung good grades. Ay, oo nga. Tama. Galing mo ah.
Tignan mo.
So, A yan. A. So, ito yung middle term natin. Yan nga. Tingnan natin. Wow! Galing ah.
Kaya lang nakakalito yun sa estudyante kasi pagka
Alin? Yung setup?
Yung dapat subject, dapat kasi pag ganito yung Puri natin. Dapat first premise,
Okay.
second premise, tapos kung...
Gaya. No, okay lang yan. Hindi,
Anyway,
maganda yan para sa totoong buhay. Hindi naman
all
structured.
cats like fish.
No dogs likes cat. Therefore, no dog likes fish. Ano ba to? So, tingnan natin ha. A, E. Okay lang yan.
Tama naman.
Negative, ang isa sa premises, so negative conclusion, tama din. Tapos, yung terms, tingnan natin yung terms. Cat, pareho naman cats, pareho. Walang equivocal dito. Fish, universal siya. Ito. Fish. Illicit. Illicit major to. Si major. May illicit affair. Ayan tingnan mo yan.
Parang Sesame Street.
Invalid. Tingnan mo. Ting.
May sagot
May sagot
na yan.
to? Ay, wala. Hindi nalagay yung
That's
sagot.
fallacy of illicit major.
Illicit major yun. Tama.
Sige, next.
Some chimpanzees can be potty trained. Bonzo is a chimpanzee. Therefore, Bonzo can be potty trained. Ano ba to? Hindi pwede to. Kasi weaker premise.
Actually, hindi yan ang kinuha sa... Ang kinuha siya sa term. Kasi some chimpanzee.
Okay.
So that can be considered as undistributed.
Undistributed middle term. Pwede. So, dalawang dito?
Conclusion pa.
Dalawang pwede. Undistributed, tapos
Although, kasi
universal.
minsan yung chimpanzee dyan is...
Oo. Ako, may nag-text.
Okay.
Tapos na tayo. O sige, bye-bye. Kita tayo sa classroom.
This is Pong Pagong
And Kiko Maching.
Messi Pon.
Messi Pon, bye-bye. Thank you for listening.